The signal from the void, the deep space monitoring station Athena 7, floated in the darkness between stars, solitary sentinel watching the cosmic silence. For 16 years, it had listened to the void, recording nothing but the background hum of the universe. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen sat at her console during the graveyard shift, her coffee growing cold as she reviewed the same empty data stream she had examined 1,000 times before. The work was monotonous, but someone had to do it. Humanity had spread across dozens of systems. Every outpost needed eyes watching for threats that might never come. The alert sound was so unexpected that Sarah nearly spilled her coffee. Her heart hammered as she stared at the screen, watching a signal pattern materialize that should not exist. It was structured, rhythmic, and absolutely artificial. For a moment she sat frozen, her mind struggling to process what her instruments were telling her. This was not random cosmic noise or a glitch in the system. This was a message, and it was coming from a region of space where no human vessel had any reason to be. Sarah's hands moved across the controls with practiced efficiency. Running diagnostic after diagnostic, each test confirmed what she already knew but desperately wanted to deny. The signal was real, emanating from a point roughly 40 light-years from Earth, in a sector that preliminary surveys had marked as empty. She initiated the priority communication protocols, knowing that what she was about to report would change everything. Within hours, the Unified Earth Council had escalated the discovery to the highest level. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. The response was swift and decisive. The exploration vessel Prometheus was redirected from its current mission and tasked with investigating the signal. Captain Marcus Webb, a veteran of 20 years in deep space, assembled his crew with the grim efficiency of someone who understood the stakes. If this was first contact, humanity needed to approach it with both caution and strength. The Prometheus was not a warship, but it carried enough firepower to defend itself, and its crew was trained for scenarios that ranged from scientific cooperation to hostile engagement. The journey to the signal's origin took 3 weeks at maximum sustainable velocity. During that time, the crew analyzed every fragment of data they could extract from the transmission. The signal repeated on a precise cycle, a complex mathematical sequence embedded with what appeared to be star charts and chemical formulas. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the ship's xenolinguist, worked around the clock to decode the patterns. She found beauty in the alien mathematics, a different way of conceptualizing reality that was both foreign and strangely elegant. The beings who sent this message thought in ways humanity had never imagined. As the Prometheus approached the coordinates, the crew's tension became palpable. Captain Webb ordered all stations to battle readiness, not out of aggression, but out of prudence. They had no idea what waited for them in the darkness. When they finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel, their sensors immediately detected an anomaly that made every person on the bridge catch their breath. Floating in the void was a structure unlike anything in human engineering. A massive construct of geometric perfection that seemed to defy the laws of physics they understood. The structure was roughly spherical, but composed of interlocking plates that shifted in patterns. The human eye struggled to follow. It measured nearly 10 kilometers in diameter, dwarfing the Prometheus completely. There were no obvious weapons, no signs of propulsion, yet it maintained a perfect orbit around nothing, suspended in space as if gravity itself bent to its will. The signal originated from its core, pulsing outward in waves that the ship's sensors could barely measure. Whatever built this had technology far beyond anything humanity possessed. Captain Webb made the decision that would define his career. They would attempt contact. The risk was incalculable, but so was the potential. Humanity had always been defined by its willingness to reach into the unknown, to take chances that more cautious species might avoid. Dr. Tanaka prepared a response message, carefully crafted to mirror the mathematical structure of the alien signal while introducing human variables. They would show whoever was listening that Earth had intelligence, curiosity, and peaceful intentions. The response came within minutes of their transmission, and it was not what anyone expected. The alien structure suddenly blazed with light, thousands of points igniting across its surface in a pattern that looked almost biological. The signal changed, becoming more complex, layered with information that made the ship's computers strain to process. And then, without warning, a section of the structure opened, revealing a passageway into its interior that seemed to beckon them forward. The crew of the Prometheus faced an impossible choice. Entering that structure could mean discovery beyond imagination, or a trap from which there would be no escape. Every instinct screamed caution. Yet every ambition whispered of the glory that awaited those brave enough to take the next step. Captain Webb looked at his crew, seeing in their faces the same mixture of fear and wonder that he felt in his own chest. Humanity had come too far to turn back now. Into the unknown. Captain Webb gave the order with steady hands despite the tremor of uncertainty running through his veins. The Prometheus would enter the structure, but not blindly. He deployed a series of reconnaissance drones first, small automated scouts that would map the interior and test for environmental hazards. The drones disappeared into the opening, their telemetry streams flowing back to the ship in real time. What they revealed was both mesmerizing and unsettling. The interior was vast beyond comprehension. A network of chambers and corridors that seemed to extend far deeper than the structure's exterior dimensions could possibly allow. The drones detected no atmosphere, no radiation spikes, no obvious traps or weapons systems. The passages were lined with the same geometric patterns that covered the exterior, shifting and rearranging in ways that suggested active computation on a massive scale. Dr. Tanaka watched the data with growing excitement. Recognizing mathematical constants embedded in the very architecture, this was not just a ship or a station. It was a message made physical, a three-dimensional proof of concepts that human mathematics had only begun to theorize. Whoever built this thought on scales humanity was just learning to imagine. After 2 hours of drone reconnaissance, Captain Webb made his second critical decision. He would lead a small team inside personally, taking with him Dr. Tanaka, Chief Engineer Paulo Santos, and Lieutenant Commander Aria Okonkwo, the ship's security chief. They suited up in full environmental gear, checking and rechecking every seal and system. The shuttle detached from the Prometheus with a soft hiss, carrying the 4 humans toward an encounter that would echo through history. Behind them, the rest of the crew maintained constant communication links. Ready to extract the team at the first sign of danger, the shuttle passed through the opening, into a chamber so large that its far walls disappeared into darkness. Their light seemed inadequate against the scale, tiny pinpricks illuminating only fragments of the alien architecture surrounding them. The geometric patterns on the walls pulsed with faint bioluminescence, creating waves of color that moved in response to their presence. It was as if the structure itself was aware of them, watching and assessing these newcomers who had dared to accept its invitation. Paulo crossed himself unconsciously, a gesture from childhood that felt appropriate in the face of something so far beyond human understanding. Paulo worked frantically to create a response, programming their shuttle's holographic systems to generate mathematical proofs that humans had discovered. He showed them equations for gravity and electromagnetism, displayed the periodic table and the structure of DNA, the alien being watched, its form pulsing with what might have been excitement or approval. Then it did something unexpected. It reached out with one luminous appendage and touched the holographic display of human DNA, causing it to expand and transform. The double helix unraveled and recombined with alien genetic structures, creating something entirely new. The implication was staggering. This was not just first contact. This was an invitation to evolution, a proposition to join something greater than either species alone. The being showed them visions of other civilizations, dozens of species spread across the galaxy, each one contributing their unique perspective to a collective endeavor. They were building something together, a network of consciousness and knowledge that spanned light years. And they wanted humanity to join them, to add human ingenuity and resilience to the tapestry of galactic civilization. Captain Ebb felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. He was a ship's captain, not a diplomat or a representative of all humanity. Yet here he stood, being asked to make a choice that would define his species' future. He looked at his team, seeing the same mixture of terror and hope reflected in their eyes. Dr. Tanaka was practically vibrating with eagerness. Her entire life's work validated and exceeded in a single moment. Paulo looked cautious but intrigued, his engineer's mind already considering the possibilities. Lieutenant Okonkwo kept her professional composure, but her hand had drifted away from her weapon. The alien being pulsed again, and new images formed in the holographic display. It showed Earth, beautiful and blue against the darkness of space. Then it showed other worlds, some thriving with life and others barren and dead. The message was clear and chilling. The galaxy was not a safe place. There were threats out there, forces that sought to consume and destroy rather than create and cooperate. The collective of civilizations was not just a scientific endeavor. It was a defensive alliance, a gathering of species who chose cooperation over isolation, who understood that survival required unity. The choice that echoes the revelation hung in the air like a physical weight, pressing down on the small team of humans standing in the heart of an alien megastructure. Captain Webb felt his pulse hammering in his ears as he processed what they were being shown. This was not simply an invitation to join a galactic community of scientists and explorers. This was a recruitment into something far more significant. A coalition formed out of necessity against dangers humanity had not yet encountered. The being of light continued its demonstration, showing flashes of devastation. Entire star systems consumed by something the holographic display could barely render. A darkness that seemed to devour light itself. Dr. Tanaka stepped forward, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of the moment. She asked the question that everyone was thinking, directing it at the alien presence through a combination of spoken words and mathematical symbols displayed on her portable terminal. What were they fighting against? The being responded by creating the most disturbing image yet. It showed a force that was neither organic nor mechanical. Something that existed in the spaces between dimensions, feeding on energy and matter indiscriminately. These entities, whatever they were, had destroyed civilizations before, and they would destroy more unless opposed by united strength. Paulo felt his stomach turn as he watched worlds crumble in the holographic playback. The engineer in him wanted to understand the physics of what he was seeing, but the human in him could only feel horror at the scale of destruction. These were not natural disasters or the inevitable entropy of the universe. These were deliberate acts of consumption by intelligences that viewed all matter and energy as nothing more than fuel. The alien collective had been fighting this threat for millennia, holding back the tide through coordination and shared technology. Now they were asking humanity to join that eternal struggle. Lieutenant Okonkwo spoke up, her tactical mind cutting through the emotional weight of the revelation. She wanted to know what humanity would gain from this alliance beyond survival. The being seemed to appreciate the directness of the question, responding with a cascade of images that showed technological marvels beyond human imagination. Faster-than-light travel that made their current engines look primitive, energy sources that could power entire civilizations, medical advances that could extend lifespans and eliminate disease. The collective shared everything, holding back no knowledge from those who joined their ranks. Cooperation was not just encouraged, but fundamental to their existence. Captain Webb found himself facing the decision he had hoped to avoid. He could accept on humanity's behalf, binding his species to an alliance they barely understood against enemies they had never seen. Or he could decline, leaving the structure and returning to Earth with a report that would shock the unified Council but ultimately leave humanity's fate in human hands alone. The safe choice was to defer, to bring this information back, and let the politicians and scientists debate for years. But something in the alien being's demeanor suggested that time was not a luxury they possessed. The invitation had an expiration. Hesitation might be interpreted as rejection. Dr. Tanaka touched his arm gently, drawing his attention away from the swirling holograms. She spoke quietly, her words meant only for the team. They had to consider what refusing would mean. If these beings were telling the truth, and she believed they were based on the mathematical consistency of everything they had shown, then humanity was in danger whether they joined or not. The hostile forces would eventually reach human space, drawn by the same energy signatures that powered their cities and ships. At least as part of the collective, humanity would have allies and advanced knowledge. Alone, they would be vulnerable and ignorant. Paulo added his perspective with the pragmatism of someone who had spent decades solving impossible problems. He noted that the alien structure itself was proof of technological capability far beyond human achievement. Whatever they had built here violated several laws of physics as humanity understood them, which meant either their physics was wrong, or these beings had found ways to bend rules humans considered absolute. The knowledge transfer alone would accelerate human development by centuries. From an engineering standpoint, the benefits vastly outweighed the risks. Lieutenant Okonkwo remained skeptical, her security training demanding that she consider worst-case scenarios. What if this was an elaborate trap, a way to lure species into dependence before enslaving or manipulating them? The being responded to her unspoken concern by projecting images of the collective's governing structure. There was no central authority, no single species that dominated the others. Decisions were made through consensus, with each civilization maintaining full autonomy over their internal affairs. The only requirement was participation in the common defense and honest sharing of knowledge. It was cooperation born of mutual necessity, not hierarchy imposed by force. The captain closed his eyes and thought of Earth. Of the billions of people going about their lives completely unaware that their future hung in the balance. He thought of the children who would inherit whatever choice he made today, of the scientists who would build on the knowledge they gained, or the soldiers who would fight alone against incomprehensible threats. He thought of humanity's defining characteristics, the curiosity that drove them to explore, the resilience that helped them survive against impossible odds, the stubborn determination to forge their own path even when easier roads beckoned. Asterisk. Paulo added his perspective with the pragmatism of someone who had spent decades solving impossible problems. He noted that the alien structure itself was proof of technological capability far beyond human achievement. Whatever they had built here violated several laws of physics as humanity understood them, which meant either their physics was wrong, or these beings had found ways to bend rules humans considered absolute. The knowledge transfer alone would accelerate human development by centuries. From an engineering standpoint, the benefits vastly outweighed the risks. Lieutenant Okonkwo remained skeptical, her security training demanding that she consider worst-case scenarios. What if this was an elaborate trap, a way to lure species into dependence before enslaving or manipulating them? The being responded to her unspoken concern by projecting images of the collective's governing structure. There was no central authority, no single species that dominated the others. Decisions were made through consensus, with each civilization maintaining full autonomy over their internal affairs. The only requirement was participation in the common defense and honest sharing of knowledge. It was cooperation born of mutual necessity, not hierarchy imposed by force. The captain closed his eyes and thought of Earth. Of the billions of people going about their lives completely unaware that their future hung in the balance, he thought of the children who would inherit whatever choice he made today, of the scientists who would build on the knowledge they gained, or the soldiers who would fight alone against incomprehensible threats. He thought of humanity's defining characteristics, the curiosity that drove them to explore, the resilience that helped them survive against impossible odds, the stubborn determination to forge their own path even when easier roads beckoned. When he opened his eyes, Captain Marcus Webb knew what he had to do. He addressed the alien being directly, speaking clearly for the record that was being transmitted back to the Prometheus and would eventually reach Earth. He accepted the invitation on behalf of the First Contact team, acknowledging that this decision would need to be ratified by proper governmental authorities, but expressing his belief that humanity would choose cooperation over isolation. The risks were real, but so were the opportunities. Humanity had always been defined by its willingness to reach for the stars, and this was simply the next step in that eternal journey. Asterisk, the being of light pulsed brilliantly, and suddenly the entire structure came alive with activity. New sections opened, revealing chambers filled with technology and information storage systems. Smaller beings, similar to the first but distinct in their patterns, emerged to greet the humans. Dr. Tanaka was immediately surrounded by what appeared to be scientists, their holographic forms creating complex diagrams and formulas in the air around her. Paulo found himself being shown engineering marvels that made his hands shake with eagerness to understand. Even Lieutenant Okonkwo was approached by what she instinctively recognized as fellow warriors, beings who understood the weight of defending others. Captain Webb stood in the center of it all, watching his team begin the greatest adventure humanity had ever undertaken. He knew that when they returned to Earth, nothing would ever be the same. There would be fear and resistance, debates, and controversies. Those who celebrated the alliance, and those who condemned it. But humanity would adapt, as it always had, taking this new reality and making it their own. The universe was larger and more dangerous than they had imagined, but it was also full of allies and wonders beyond counting. The signal from the void had been an invitation to transcendence, a call to join something greater than any single species could achieve alone. And humanity, with all its flaws and all its potential, had answered that call. The future stretched out before them, uncertain and challenging, filled with threats that would test their courage and opportunities that would expand their understanding. But they would face it together, not just as humans, but as part of a galactic family bound by shared purpose and mutual respect. As the Prometheus received the transmission of everything that had transpired, as Earth's communication networks lit up with the news that would change civilization forever. For humans stood in an alien megastructure and took the first steps into a larger universe. The age of humanity's isolation had ended. The age of cooperation, of shared struggle and shared triumph had begun. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, ancient threats stirred, unaware that the galaxy had just gained a new defender. A species whose ingenuity and determination would prove far more formidable than anyone could have predicted.